This evening, our writers are being introduced by their mentors. Unfortunately, one of our brilliant mentors, Michael Doncor, couldn't be here tonight. He's fine, he's in Portugal. He lives in Portugal, so that's even more envy there. But he has been kind enough to record his introductions for his writers for us to share with you. So bear with me a moment while I do technology.
Me again. I'm delighted to now introduce to you Kelechi Njoku. Kelechi is a special writer, a very learned writer who reads really widely and is very ambitious for himself. His prose has a deceptive quietness about it. Beneath this very still surface, there is a flickering, very sharp wit at work, which I absolutely loved. So you're in for a real treat. Kelechi Njoku is a fiction writer and editor from Nigeria and a graduate of the MA in Creative Writing at the University of East Anglia. In 2022, he was the inaugural fellow of the Rajat Neogy Editorial Fellowship with a Longhouse magazine. In 2020, he was the writer-in-residence at Blackrock in Senegal, and he has been shortlisted for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize and previously won the Writivism Short Story Prize, West Africa region. His writing appears in Adda, Litro, Brittle Paper, and This is Africa. Delighted to hand over now to Kelechi.
Hi. All right. Good evening, everyone. So I will be reading from my short story titled Room for Two. It's a bit of a drama. It's about two characters, Charlie and Neddy. So Charlie is a little educated gay man married to a lesbian, and so they are in a mixed orientation marriage to sort of escape society's homophobia. And so that's not all the problem that they have. They also want children, and that's just not happening. So this is them visiting a doctor to figure out why they can't have children, and then the conversation that ensues. So, room for two. They listened to the doctor repeat himself regarding what to do with the 4-inch long plastic bottle. They nodded, they understood, and had no questions or anything significant to say. They would get him the sperm sample this week. As they stepped out of the cloud of disinfectant and medicine smells into the 11 a.m. sun outside the hospital, Charlie asked Neddy to hand over the car keys he wanted to drive. Neddy hesitated, stopping herself just in time from asking, "Are you sure?" Not like he was an invalid or anything, but the job of who to drive the one Audi they owned had never been an issue. If Charlie picked the keys from the dressing table first, then Charlie drove them to their destination and back. And if Neddy got hold of the keys first, then she was the day's driver. She dropped the keys in his waiting palm without a word. At the same time, she wanted to let him know that based on the things she'd read, that plastic bottle in his pocket was only the start. There would be several more visits like this to the hospital, more tests and more questions that would make them squirm and swallow uncomfortably. Charlie should be prepared, not sulk. They would have the children they wanted eventually, she believed, but for now, he could drive if he wanted, if it made him feel better. It did make Charlie feel better, driving. Throughout the 30 minutes with the doctor, he had lost all sense of who he was, felt like a counterfeit version of himself. His entire life, he had never been more aware of his penis. In his mind, he'd seen the doctor poking between his legs with a stick, questioning the authenticity of the organ there. And Charlie had felt dead. "I like it when you're silly," Neddy laughed when he told her some days later how he'd felt with the doctor. Charlie shook his head. She thought he was joking. Imagine. Look at him, the white in his hair multiplied every day. Look at her. Her cheeks, which used to be firm and pointing forward, now sagged. So what made her laugh? But he forgave her ill humor because the fights hadn't been frequent then. In fact, they'd been gossiping about Sister Favor from church, who had invited them to a miracle crusade to see a pastor of hers who opened wombs. It's going to be a power-packed encounter, Sister Favor had declared. That sounds stifling, Ned said to Charlie, losing herself in her mirth, unable to, and unwilling as well, to forget how Sister Favor had looked with a big Bible pressed to her breasts, as she stated how she saw no reason why Charlie and Ned should miss the crusade. Stop laughing, Nne, Charlie pleaded, but she laughed harder. I'm sorry, Ned said now, the hospital far behind them. Charlie grunted. He knew what she meant, that she was apologizing for going to see the doctor weeks before today without talking to him first. But he wasn't sure he was annoyed about that. What did it affect, after all? He shrugged, even though Ned couldn't excuse her own actions. Yes, she'd had her reasons. She had wanted to have a head start in dealing with the outcome of what she knew was an inevitable trip to the doctor. She had feared before the doctor handed her the results of the CCT and HSG that she had the problem. That day, weeks ago, every strength in her hands had collapsed in relief as she held the results that confirmed that her eggs were fine, her tubes were fine, she was fine. She left the doctor's office that day thinking strangely of Charlie's mother, Mama. The woman was okay. She made excellent abacha, better than Ned did, and although Ned reached for every excuse not to be in Mama's company for more than 15 minutes because Mama was one of those people who remarked on everything they saw, Ned still preferred that she and her mother-in-law maintain their friendship, even if from its current distance. She did not need the uncomfortable intimacy that could arise with Mama checking on her and Charlie every few weeks, wondering what could be wrong, if they slept together at all. She was tired of Mama asking her, "Where are my babies?" Thank you.